You want to learn how to do a back tuck. You're a bit too scaredy fraidy cat. You're too scared to do it. Oh, I don't want to go upside down. Actually really valid that is the main thing that holds you back, despite that performance. If you're looking at a front somersault and a back somersault, a front somersault is technically harder to do because it's a blind landing. A back tuck is physically easier to understand what you have to do, but it's the mindset, it's the fear that holds you back of going over to your neck. And you will never truly experience what it feels to do that until you commit to doing one. But committing to doing a back tuck carries a degree of risk. And on top of that, a safe environment can be hard to come by. We're talking about a gymnastics center or professional coaching to do it. So how do we address this fear when we're not in an ideal situation? Disclaimer to this whole thing is you don't. You should go to a gymnastics center and get a professional coach to help you with this somewhat dangerous skill. You are rotating 360 degrees and your head is at some point the thing closest to the ground. Saying that though, here's a few ways to overcome the fear when you don't have access. The first one is going to the side. Initially lets you progressively work towards that complete rotation going backwards. I think this is the worst way to learn, but it is actually how I did learn, which is very ironic. This was a kid just in his backyard learning. The main con of this one, progressing from this and expecting it to eventually lead to that, is quite a stretch, especially for an adult learning. What this runs the risk of doing is just setting a bad habit that every time you go for a somersault, you're immediately going to look to the side. And we look to the side because our brain and our eyes just want to see the ground as soon as possible. There's a point of no return and vulnerability that just doesn't get experienced when you go to the side. Even if you're very close, I'm looking at the floor when I do that. The second one is getting a spotter, getting a coach to spot you through it. This will give you the confidence to attempt the skill because you've got a professional that is going to help you some of the way. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Cool. If I was to bail that somersault, as an adult, the spotter cannot really save you. Unless there's a huge size discrepancy in the favor of the spotter, it's still not a guarantee unless you fully commit that the somersault is yours. This third one is a special piece of equipment that just highlights the con, is that you need to source this, is using a harness. Now, you probably more likely would find a harness at a gymnastics center. Gymnastics Forza make one that you can use to help with back somersaults. The pro of this is that it gives you the confidence to fully commit and be relatively safe through the whole 360 degrees. But the con is obviously sourcing this bit of equipment and also just the faff of setting everything up. It actually is a little bit awkward unless you are very close to the movement. That will probably, even though you do the whole thing kind of on your own in the air, that setup would still be quite messy to learning the understanding of what you have to do. The next one is quite an obvious one, is finding a foam pit to attempt your back tuck. Now, the foam pit offers a lot of safety. It's not foolproof. You still don't want to land on your head in a foam pit, but you definitely feel a lot safer risking that in your attempts. You have a lot of freedom to try it. So unlike the harness, you're not trapped and locked into something specific. The cons to using the foam pit, you need to obviously find a gymnastics center or somewhere that has a massive pit of foam. I also don't like, this is to do with pools and to do with foam pits, is I also don't like the huge encouragement that these things give that you have to jump backwards to do the move. It's something you certainly can't overcome, but it can set bad habits when you're trying to teach someone that has only ever practiced into a pool or into a foam pit, is the habit of just jumping backwards to make the movement happen. And we need to coach them over again to be jumping up a bit more to generate that power for the flip. Next one is doing the drills. I think that the main goal for getting over that fear is really drilling the technique so that when it actually comes time to go for your back tuck, you have something to focus on, is the technique. And if you just put all of that together, it will happen, rather than thinking I have to be going upside down, I have to feel the feeling and I have to be at risk. Just do your drills and you will end up back on your feet. Ev and I have actually already made a video on this. It's another back tuck video. The only downside to these is they still do not replicate the feeling of going upside down, suspended in the air with no assistance at all. They just don't. They're so helpful, but they are still not going upside down without help. Last one is using equipment to help mimic or like replicate the whole movement. So I've got this setup here of, it's like a pyramid box, and it doesn't have to be this shape. You fully commit to performing the back tuck. What this box has done has supported me at the riskiest and highest part of the somersault. This is the closest thing you'll feel to performing the back tuck independently, but still using something. There's a crash mat on the other side. The boxes are soft. It's set up to the right height for the jump. It ticks a lot of boxes. I still think you need a safe setup to start practicing this, but if you can in any way get a setup like this can be a great way to close that gap with the fear of the back tuck to actually doing the back tuck. So those are my best ways, no gimmicks as to how you would approach a back tuck if you have a lot of fear in doing the movement and if you don't have access to much equipment. You can see I kind of contradict that a lot, where I have used a lot of different equipment to give examples of how to do it. And that simply is just to highlight that if you don't have access to that kind of stuff, it is very much an uphill and somewhat of a risky battle to learn. So that is just why I advocate so heavily for finding a gymnastics center and a professional to teach you, because safety should be your #1 priority. There are a few ways you can do it, but you can probably tell that the methods that don't utilize much or if any equipment generally result in the worst type of back tuck that is just laden with bad habits. So you do have options to consider given your situation and context. Programs in the description. Let me know if you want to see any other videos surrounding tumbling, and I will see you for the next one.